The hearing was supposed to be predictable, tense, sure, anything involving the Epstein files always is, but still orderly, methodical, controlled. No one expected the moment when Congressman Thomas Massie would suddenly escalate the entire room into one of the most explosive confrontations the committee had seen in months. At first it didn't even look like a fight. Massie didn't raise his voice immediately, and Bondi didn't look rattled. But the quiet, controlled tone he used when he said the DOJ had committed what he called a catastrophic failure, that was what shifted the atmosphere.
Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to redact, a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there. The next document I want to show you, that was in the title, the victims' survivors' names, all right? The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators. Fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking. Not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking. And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need, that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions. So I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time.
Mr.
Chairman.
This isn't how this works.
Can I have my time back? Mr. Chairman.
The gentlelady can give her answer. The time belongs to the gentleman from
Kentucky. All right, I'm reclaiming my time.
Can I give my answer?
So yes. I'm going to put the language of the bill up on the screen.
Chairman, may I give my answer on that?
Here's
a political joke, and I need to give my answer on that.
We'll let the Attorney General respond, and then the gentleman can move to his next question.
It's my time.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over 4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician. You need to get on to watch the matter.
Mr. Chairman, please restore his time and remind the witness of the rules here.
There is no credible information. None. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday that he trafficked to other individuals.
Is that your position as well?
My position is any victim who comes forward, of course, we would love to hear from them. 1-800-CALL-FBI. Did you ask Merrick Garland that the last 4 years? Did you talk about Epstein?
I am reclaiming my time. I'm glad you're asking about Merrick Garland.
You don't get to reclaim
because
time
this
when
is
you don't-
bigger than
when you can't-
Watergate.
when I don't answer a question the way
This
you
goes
want.
over 4 administrations. You don't have to go back to Biden. Let's go back to Obama. Let's go back to George Bush. This cover-up spans decades, and you are responsible for this portion of it.
And that's
now,
where the
I want to
most
know at
transparent-
what point did the FBI and the DOJ decide that Lex Wessner was not a co-conspirator? Because our Epstein Files Transparency Act requires you, please put it back on the screen, please, to release the internal decision about whether to prosecute him or not, and it's not in the files, and it's not in the files for any of these other men.
Time of the gentleman has expired.
May she answer?
And he's a hypocrite because he voted against the ban that we were talking about on deep fake AI porn. Only 2 people voted against it, and you were one of them, hypocrite.
The gentleman's time has expired. She didn't answer the question.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, could she answer the question?
Chairman, I was wondering.
The gentlelady's allowed, the Attorney General's allowed to respond the way she wants to respond to any member's questions, Republican, Democrat.
All right, I have unanimous consent request.
Gentleman's recognized for a UC.
All right, this is an example. I'm submitting these 302 forms that are entirely redacted, even when you go to look at them.
Without objection.
I'm submitting a witness statement that implicates Les Wexner.
Without objection.
I'm submitting an article from the New York Times that the DOJ released nude photos and identifiable pictures of the victims. I'm submitting a letter from A.G. Bondi to Kash Patel, imploring him to quit keeping the files when you found out that they were keeping files from you, because they're still redacting files that you.
Chairman, are we going to recess for votes?
Yes, we are.
I'm submitting for unanimous consent a document of 17 individuals who've resigned because of the Epstein files.
Without objection. Just want to check on how much time we have left in votes, but one thing I've learned here of late that they'll wait on us. How much time do we have? Oh, they just called. Okay. The chair now.
People leaned forward, cameras zoomed in, and the moment he lifted the first document above his head, the room realized something very different was about to unfold. Massie explained that the email he was holding wasn't controversial because of what it requested. It became controversial because of what the DOJ did with it. The email contained a list of names belonging to survivors who had explicitly asked the Department of Justice not to release their identities. These were individuals who had been through unthinkable trauma, who had every right to privacy, and who trusted the DOJ to protect them. But according to Massie, that trust had been shattered. He said the DOJ released that very email unredacted, exposing names that should have remained confidential. Some of those survivors were now receiving phone calls from strangers, from curious people, from those digging for information. They were blindsided. They hadn't prepared for their identities to become public again. Massie didn't hold back the anger in his voice. He said this wasn't just a mistake. This was literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors. His words hit the room like a hammer. Even people who normally stayed stone-faced shifted in their seats. And Bondi, listening carefully, seemed to know this accusation alone could dominate headlines for days. But Massie didn't give anyone time to recover. Before the tension could settle into silence, he grabbed his second document. And this one, even before he read its title, looked heavier. The title was blunt: Child Sex Trafficking Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. He read it slowly, letting the words sink in. A document created by federal investigators, labeled with allegations of child trafficking, and the entire thing was blacked out. Massie's frustration turned into disbelief when he described what he found inside. He claimed the DOJ had hidden the name of Les Wexner from this specific file, even though, in his words, "Your Deputy Attorney General said he appears hundreds of times in the files." To Massie, that difference mattered. This was not just any file. This was a file listing co-conspirators, not assistants, not associates, co-conspirators. And Massie said Wexner's name had been concealed until he forced the DOJ to release it. Bondi pushed back quickly. She said his name appeared thousands of times across the broader document set, that this wasn't evidence of any attempt to protect him. She emphasized that a correction had been made in under an hour. But Massie didn't accept that explanation. He shot back that the correction only happened because he caught them red-handed. The phrase landed hard. People murmured. Bondi asked to finish her answer, but Massie interrupted, reclaiming his time as the procedural chaos started to mount. Their voices overlapped, her insisting she was correcting misinformation, him insisting she wasn't answering the central question. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a collision of perspectives, one accusing the DOJ of concealment, the other claiming transparency. The chairman tried to calm things down, but the tension had already morphed into something more serious. And once again, Massie moved to his next piece of evidence. This time he held up FBI FD 302 forms, the official records summarizing witness interviews. To him, these were some of the most important documents in the entire collection. These were the records where survivors described the men involved, the locations, the patterns of behavior, the details investigators needed. But the versions the DOJ released were almost comically redacted. Entire pages were black. Entire statements were unreadable. And Massie added a more disturbing detail. Even when he went to the DOJ portal to view the unredacted sections, the portal showed more redactions on top of the redactions. Clicking on a hidden name didn't reveal anything. It just produced another wall of black ink. He described it like a loop, black boxes leading to more black boxes, until the document became unusable. Bondi responded with a firm statement: there is no credible information, none that Epstein trafficked to other individuals. If there were, I would bring the case yesterday. Her tone was decisive, but it didn't land the way she hoped. Massie immediately fired back, questioning how she could claim there was no credible information when survivors testified that certain names were involved. And online for years people have speculated that these heavily redacted 302s might contain references to powerful individuals, speculation that has never been verified but continues to circulate constantly. Massie's argument fed into that speculation. Bondi's denial attempted to shut it down, but neither position resolved the tension. The room grew louder, voices layered over voices, but Massie wasn't finished. He switched from individual documents to a much broader accusation. He argued that this issue wasn't limited to Bondi or the current DOJ leadership. He accused the Department of Justice of maintaining secrecy across multiple presidential administrations. In his words, the cover-up, if it existed, didn't start with Biden. It didn't start with Trump. It didn't even start with Obama. He extended the claim all the way back to the years of George W. Bush, saying that the alleged concealment of information began long before Bondi arrived. His argument was that this wasn't partisan, it was institutional, a decades-long chain of withholding, redacting, obscuring and delaying. Even though much of this relies on speculation circulating online, claims that have never been proven, Massie's delivery made it feel urgent. He wasn't speaking hypothetically. He was making a direct accusation. Bondi responded by stressing her willingness to hear from any victim who comes forward. She repeated that the FBI hotline is open, that her team is committed to justice, that no one is ignoring victims' voices. But at that point, the argument had evolved past individual reassurances. Now it was about trust. Massie didn't trust the DOJ's process. Bondi didn't trust the accusations being thrown at her. And the room didn't trust that either side could finish a sentence without being interrupted. Just when it seemed the confrontation might finally cool down, another lawmaker reignited the spark. A representative jumped in, calling Massie a hypocrite for voting against a bill banning deepfake explicit imagery, implying that he was being inconsistent in his moral outrage. Bondi's expression shifted, irritation, disbelief and exhaustion all at once. Massie reacted sharply, demanding his time be restored. The chairman tried to remind everyone of procedure, but at this point, the hearing wasn't really following procedure anymore, it was following emotion. And when Massie declared, "This is bigger than Watergate," any remaining sense of restraint vanished. The comment wasn't subtle, it wasn't cautious, it was meant to be felt. And it was. Members of Congress looked at each other as if trying to assess whether he meant it literally or symbolically. The audience behind them whispered. Even Bondi's posture changed slightly. Whether or not Massie's claim is supported by evidence, the assertion alone was enough to dominate the narrative. Then came the most dramatic moment of the entire exchange. Massie entering document after document into the official record. He did it slowly, methodically, almost ceremonially. Each submission carried the weight of another accusation, another piece of dysfunction, another sign that the DOJ's handling of the Epstein files had unraveled into something chaotic. The first set he submitted were the heavily redacted 302 forms, the ones he said were impossible to read. He explained that no one, not even members of Congress, could pull up the hidden information from the DOJ portal. He described it as redaction on redaction, a phrase that instantly spread through social media. Then he entered a witness statement that he claimed implicated Wexner directly, framed not as proof, but as evidence of inconsistencies in what Bondi's team had released. After that came a New York Times article reporting that the DOJ had accidentally released identifiable photos of victims during the document dump. The article had sparked outrage when it first appeared, and now Massie was using it to reinforce his claim that the DOJ was mishandling every aspect of the file production process. He wasn't done. He added a letter written by Bondi to Kash Patel, urging him to stop withholding files from her office. To him, this letter showed internal resistance, disagreements within the government about how much should be released. And finally, he introduced a document listing 17 individuals who had resigned from their positions allegedly due to issues involving the Epstein records. Whether those resignations were directly related has never been proven, but the list alone created an unsettling impression. Bondi pushed back where she could, correcting timelines, clarifying procedures, insisting that many of Massie's interpretations were misunderstandings. But Massie wasn't looking for clarifications. He was building a narrative of systemic failure, and every document he added strengthened that narrative. The chairman tried repeatedly to balance the exchange, reminding both sides of the rules, but the hearing had already taken on a life of its own. Eventually the announcement came that votes had been called, members needed to leave. The hearing would be paused, but the air in the room didn't feel paused, it felt charged. Frustration lingered, confusion lingered, suspicion lingered, and the public watching from home found themselves confronting new questions. Why were survivor names released? How did such a damaging error slip through? Why was the co-conspirator document redacted so heavily until pressure forced disclosure? Why were the 302 forms unreadable? Why did clicking on them reveal nothing? And if this is how messy the process is for the few documents we've seen, what does that imply about the files still behind closed doors? Massie's confrontation didn't produce definitive answers. Bondi's explanations didn't fully extinguish the controversy. But the exchange itself revealed something bigger, something deeper than a simple testimony. It exposed a massive distrust between Congress and the Department of Justice, a fear among survivors that their information isn't being safeguarded, and a widespread belief among Americans that the full truth about Epstein's network hasn't surfaced. For years, rumors have echoed across online forums and investigative circles. Some claim the documents contain names of wealthy, powerful figures. Others suggest the files have been manipulated, reshuffled, delayed, or sanitized. None of these claims have been verified, but they continue to persist, and every chaotic hearing, every mistake, every redacted file only adds fuel to that speculation. Now, after everything that unfolded between Massie and Bondi, the world is watching more closely than ever. People want transparency. Survivors deserve justice. Investigators claim they are following the law. Lawmakers claim they aren't being told everything, and somewhere in the middle of all those conflicting narratives lies a truth that still feels out of reach. As the hearing ended and members shuffled out to cast their votes, one unresolved question lingered in the air, almost like a shadow following every step. When the remaining Epstein records finally emerge, will they confirm what some have feared for years or reveal something even more unexpected?